Krystal Ball of Breaking Points had the Young Turks personality Cenk Uygur on to talk about what's next for the Democrats and what we can expect from the upcoming Trump term. Earlier in this conversation, Cenk had expressed a hopefulness that the right-wing populism of Trump 2024 was different than the right-wing populism of Trump 2016, and that he hoped there would be a bridge too far, that these sort of Joe Rogans and younger generation Republican populists would draw the line and say, for example, oh, you can't denaturalize Ro Khanna because he disagrees with you. That's too much, man, and they'll put a stop to it. Which I kind of agree with Krystal Ball, who disagrees. I don't know. Well, we'll see, man. That seems like wishful thinking to me. But now they're going to talk about the establishment, and I think this chunk is really interesting because to me, I often do Bernie Sanders clips on here. To me, the core, there's many facets to why we are where we are now, and they are global. They're not just American. But to me, if there is a core of it, it has to do with wealth and money. And then the power that commands. So let's listen to them, Krystal Ball and Cenk Uygur, talking about the establishment.
Because the other part that I have a question about here is you say the establishment has been defeated. And I should say, even in the Democratic Party, I think they have been dealt a blow. I think you see that in MSNBC's cratering ratings. I think that creates an opportunity, a possibility. But I don't think they've been defeated. I think it's very possible we end up with Pete and Gavin, next time around in the Democratic primary. These people are very resilient. I think you have a lot of, affluent liberals who will think that they could be the answer to the problems, et cetera. They still have a lot of money power. But on the Republican side, too,
Just before she goes on, I want to chime in here. That presumes, of course, that things don't get so off the rails that there is a conventional election in 2028 and not just some sort of kangaroo staged thing like they have, say, in Russia.
For me, the ultimate final boss establishment is the billionaires who rig the rules for their own benefit. And the billionaires have basically never been more blatantly in control than right now. Elon Musk is a perfect example of this, but we can actually put this next element up on the screen, guys. Trump has the wealthiest cabinet in history. I think there are 6 billionaires so far that he's picked to be part of his administration. And so, to me, again, this is like the ultimate establishment, and they are fully in control of what's going to happen in the Trump administration.
Okay. One more, going back to Trump's problems and then this.
Yeah, okay.
So I agree with you on all that. He's been hypocritical on every one of those issues, censorship. And he said about in his first term, I don't want poor people in my cabinet.
That's right.
He said, I like rich people, right? Mm-hmm. So he's been trying to get into that elite club his whole life. So the idea that he's against the elites is kind of funny. He is, but only because he's jealous. He's
against cultural elites, Hollywood, academia.
No,
he's not against the rich.
True. He's not. That's not even true. He'd love to be in Hollywood.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And he started a fake university, right?
Yeah.
So, was he perceived as against the establishment? Yes. Right?
Yeah.
So that's is the establishment annihilated? No, of course not. Are they going to make a comeback? Of course. The empire is going to strike back in 2028.
Yeah.
But the empire struck back so many times. It struck back in 2016, 2020, 2024. And so maybe 2028 is, to extend this needless analogy, is the return of the Jedi, right? And so I'm not under any illusion that the establishment is gone, right? But was Kamala Harris the more establishment candidate? Yes, of course she was.
Sure.
Right? And so did she lose? Yes. And as I explained in another tweet in that thread, it's not just that Kamala Harris lost. Some Hillary Clinton lost, right? Joe Biden nearly lost. Mm-hmm. So it's not that. It's that mainstream media, which is the main weapon of the establishment, is now greatly reduced in its influence. Before, we could not get past them in a Democratic primary. Bernie almost had it in 16, but certainly in 2020 when he won the first 3 states, and mainstream media defeated him with their lies and propaganda, right? Oh, he's going to execute people in Central Park, he's a Nazi, etc.
Yeah.
So the mainstream media guys are the worst liars in the world, They lie way worse than even right-wing media.
I don't know about
that. Okay, we can have that discussion. I think you cannot find two bigger liars in America than Joe Scarborough and Whoopi Goldberg.
I mean,
okay?
but here I hear you, but I also have been kind of blackpilled on a lot of independent media, because that tenant media situation where, Tim Pool and whoever else were taking random sketchy money to put out whatever propaganda they were told to put out. I just, I don't see what has grown up on the right in the independent media space as actually being better than the mainstream press.
I totally disagree with you.
While
I'll tell you why.
While I feel like what I agree with you on is there is a possibility that exists now that didn't before. And so I feel I guess what I relate to in your tweet is I would say I feel energized because there is a possibility that wasn't there, that is there now. I think the most likely outcome is that things continue to get worse.
I'm afraid I have to agree with her. And look, it's not lost on me that I am a voice on YouTube talking over somebody else's video that has their own air quotes news channel on YouTube. But I think the bigger picture here is that we've seen the decline of journalism, and it's, I'm giving you my opinion on these two people giving you their opinion on, I have nothing against Breaking Points or Cenk Uygur or, Krystal Ball. I think that I agree with a lot of their viewpoints, but it is opinion. And I think that their opinion is based on fact, and I think they do try to stick to the facts. But I think we've seen a huge decline in the way people absorb their air quotes news. Fox News being the sort of largest and most brazen, they call it Fox News. Most of it's opinion, right? Sean Hannity's not news, it's opinion. So you get away with lazy, yellow, outright, we use polite terms, misinformation and disinformation. They're lies. They're lies. That's what those words mean. I don't know, somehow we're sanitizing even the concept of somebody in a suit with news-looking chyrons and an American flag and the Capitol in the background telling you a lie. So, here we are, and I do think that the right is probably the more egregious offender of that because they don't really have a platform, right? It's sort of, they want a new monarchy. They want this new CEO, and they figure they can manipulate Trump to their ends, but he's still an incompetent buffoon. Anyway, I'm ranting. Let's go back to the video.
That's why I don't feel optimistic, because what I see over the next 4 years is you're probably going to have, a lot of cruelty towards immigrants. You're likely to have, another inflationary spiral if he does, half of the tariffs he's talking about. You could very easily have more chaos in the Middle East. We're already seeing it. More brutality in the Middle East. That's almost certainly going to happen. You could have some giant crypto bubble as possible, avian flu. There's all kinds of things that I think could be horrible and brutal over the next 4 years. And I can't look at that. I would love to feel optimistic that, there's going to be a light at the end of the rainbow. And like I said, I do feel energized, but optimistic is just not, I would love to be there, but I'm not.
So let me agree and disagree in part.
Okay.
So first of all, I agree with your facts. So when we're talking about online media, are the Russians involved? Are there fracking billionaires that are financing shows?
Yeah.
Billionaire X and Billionaire Y, and do some of those shows totally serve those interests?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're reading the ads themselves.
Yeah.
So there's not even the appearance of an arm's length distance from the advertisers and the money.
I get all that and I grant all that. Okay, so why then, given those facts, am I more optimistic about online media than mainstream media? Because mainstream media is a prison. And it's a prison in the past you could not break out of. There's guardrails. You are not allowed to say things outside those guardrails. Mm-hmm. You cannot talk about how the donors obviously control all the politicians. Obviously. You cannot talk about how Israel obviously controls Washington and Washington's occupied territory. It's so obvious. But if you say you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. I hate that prison. I despise that prison of lies that is establishment media, okay? So now in online media, you got the Russians, you got this, you got wild and woolly, crazy stuff, you got people I disagree with on the extreme left, on the extreme right. It's a mess in online media, and I love it, okay? That's the jungle, but Krystal, that's our jungle, Okay, so we started this jungle at the Young Turks, and Breaking Points and Young Turks are in those same woods.
Right.
Oh, in the woods we have to fight off the right, the left, the middle, the Russians, the Israelis, the Saudis, etc. Yeah, that's the woods, baby.
Right.
Well, listen, I love his optimism, but that still doesn't account for the absolute decay of what we understand to be the truth, right? Well, we got to fight them off. How? What? You're another voice in this proverbial wilderness that you're painting, man. And you're a voice I happen to agree with a lot of times. But, you're not in a position to sway. Look, we just lost this election because he ran an incredible propaganda. Even he was surprised, right? You see the clip of Trump at the end being like, look at what we did. He can't believe they actually won all those swing states, right? And that is the power of convincing people that their one important thing on the thing they saw on YouTube, a few drips here and there, moved the needle and convinced the guy who's already been a disastrous president, but he's going to do a great job this time around. That's incredible. So I don't know how you're going to fight that.
But we were born in those woods.
I mean, I hear,
That's freedom.
I hear you, Cenk. I've seen too much. I mean, you know what the incentives are. Like, the incentives are to feed the algorithm. The incentives are to feed your audience whatever they want to hear. The incentives are to be, ever more in your own bubble. And a lot of the incentives are the same, like, access-driven ones and corruption-driven ones as the mainstream press. There's a reason why you and I didn't get interviews with Kamala Harris, because she knows we would have asked her some tough questions.
But she makes a good point. Right. I mean, before they come back around to loving the smell of their own farts here, she does make a good point. You say, oh, well, the establishment machine, is taking a drubbing, and now we're out in the woods. This is just a different machine, right? And again, I am not unaware of the fact that, I'm doing it too. I'm here on YouTube, right? The algorithm, it's just a different machine. But anyway, in general, I have a lot of respect for Cenk Uygur, and I have a lot of respect for Krystal Ball and Breaking Points and the Young Turks. I watch these guys. That's why I do videos on these guys. But I really want to hear your thoughts on all of this, because while Cenk may be trying to put a sunny face on it, and Krystal might be trying to make sense of it, I think ultimately we reelected a guy we already know what he's going to do, only he's going to be more effective at doing it. It's not going to be a sunny side of the street. Well, maybe he does good things for him. It's rip and run. It was rip and run before. It's rip and run now. And folks think they can control this guy, but he is a wild bull riding a loose cannon through a China shop that is our government and our economy, and it's going to have global consequences. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit of a grumpy mood, I guess. But let me know what you think in the comments.